If you have paid any attention to the media in the past year, you know that trans people exist. You probably also know or have been told that trans people are people who are trapped in the wrong bodies, hate their bodies, or are not real men and women. Now I want you to completely throw that out. The limited narratives we allow trans people to tell us are damaging and are part of a system that is trying to move us from one to the other, male to female, female to male, when in reality, not all of us relate to that. And yet we are all forced to squeeze ourselves into this one narrative that goes as follows. I knew since I was 5. I never liked Barbies. I hate my junk. When I say junk, I actually mean genitals. I just hate that word. I wanted to wear dresses. I am in the wrong body. I want us all to challenge this narrative. Trans folks are not people who are trapped in the wrong bodies, but rather trapped in society's misconceptions of their bodies. The cultural meaning we ascribe to certain body parts, the gendering of almost everything around us, the division between men and women in almost every facet of society, from bathrooms to sports teams, is what keeps trans folks not trapped in their bodies, but trapped in this narrative. You might be thinking of a trans person that you know, or have seen on TV, and are thinking, but hey, they fit into this narrative. You might be wondering, where are the people like the ones I'm talking about who don't share this story? The reason you aren't hearing about them is because they aren't getting the screen time or support by society to share their stories. But you're lucky, because I'm here, and this is not my story, which has made accessing the medical system and explaining my identity more challenging. I haven't known since I was 5. I've known since I was 21. I've known for longer than that I'm queer and masculine, but I didn't know I wanted to go on hormones and get top surgery until I was 22. And I love my junk. Trans folks are diverse, and like me, many of us exist outside of this narrative. Some of us choose to go on hormones, some of us don't. Some of us have known our whole lives, some of us haven't. Some of us identify with being a male and female, some of us don't. Some of us don't want to or don't have access to medical transitions. When we begin to look beyond the popular trans narrative and begin to see the real-life, diverse experiences, feelings, and desires of trans people, we begin to see that being trans is not simply a problem of incongruent bodies. The problem lies within the gender binary, the assumption that there are only 2 genders, male and female, and the harsh standards of gender policing that come with this one system and with this one established narrative. We need to expand. What I will refer to as a cis person or cis gender throughout this talk is someone who identifies with the gender they were assigned at birth based on their junk, whereas a trans person is someone who does not identify with the gender they were assigned at birth. Okay, so that's the basics. So why do I get to be here? I am here because I am masculine, because I am white, and because I am middle class. I am here because of the groundwork that has been laid down by folks who are rendered invisible and told their identities do not matter. These people are people of color, queer, trans, disabled, poor, homeless, and a lot more of them are dead sooner than they should be. These folks are not given the same access or privilege in society as I am, so that's why I get to be here today and not a trans woman of color. Today I'm going to talk to you about what the trans community is calling the bathroom problem and how gender-inclusive washrooms can help with this. While there are many issues to address in terms of the trans community that are pressing, like suicide, addiction, homelessness, trans people are being killed in the washroom, and that makes this an important issue to talk about. Many trans folks, gender non-conforming folks, masculine women, folks who simply don't identify with being male or female, struggle with using the washroom while in public space. And this is an issue that forces cis folks to confront deeply held beliefs about gender. Beliefs that are ingrained in us from the moment we are born and gendered with either pink or blue. Many of us here today may not even fully realize or consider how deeply and strongly we hold these beliefs. Bathrooms, as they exist now, are spaces where normative performances of hypermasculinity and femininity are violently enforced and demanded. For folks who fall outside of the gender binary, bathrooms become dangerous and anxiety-provoking to access. And this is happening every single time a trans person goes to the bathroom. Every single time. I don't know a trans person who doesn't have a story. I don't know a trans person who doesn't have a story about being told they were in the wrong space, had security called on them, were violently ripped out of the bathroom, had the shit kicked out of them, were raped, were killed. And all for what? For trying to pee? For trying to change their baby's diaper? For putting their lipstick on? Or for washing their hands? I am a trans masculine boy, which is spelled with an I. Depending on how I feel, I may use the men or women's washroom when I'm in public space. My negative experiences accessing the washroom have been fairly mild compared to the violence and murder that has taken place to people in my community. I have been asked to leave. I have been questioned. I have had people look me up and down and look at the sign. I have been stared at. I've been harassed. I've been called names. And I've been followed. And this is all happening because people are perceiving me as being in the wrong space based on their expectations of gender. A study was completed by the Williams Institute in 2013 by Jody Herman, which was studying trans folks accessing the washroom in public space. It found that 70% of survey respondents reported experiencing assault, verbal harassment, or being denied access to public washrooms. 54% reported having some kind of physical problem due to avoiding using the washroom while in public space, like kidney infections, urinary tract infections, or dehydration. 58% avoided going out in public at all because of lack of safe washrooms. Okay, so how do we stop this? And what is a gender-inclusive washroom exactly? I will start by saying what a gender-inclusive washroom is not. A gender-inclusive washroom is not an accessible washroom. Accessible washrooms are often single-stalled and are marked with the male and female icon as well as the wheelchair symbol. Their signage, like multi-stalled men and women's, actively enforces and promotes the gender binary, while many folks who use these washrooms fall outside of, in between, or somewhere else entirely on the gender spectrum. The accessible washroom does have a history of being used by gender nonconforming folks. Because it is private, harassment is far less likely to occur. However, the signage used to denote male and female is problematic to begin with, as it implies men wear pants and women wear skirts, a very outdated gender norm. Signage, therefore, is a major point of concern when creating gender-inclusive washrooms, and is critical in respecting, creating safety to access, and making other identities besides male and female visible. Signage should not enforce the gender binary, but should instead focus on the functionality of the space and that everyone, regardless of gender, is welcome. And this is not the case with or the intention of accessible washrooms. When it is suggested that trans folks simply use accessible washrooms or that accessible washrooms are gender inclusive, it implies that trans bodies are others, and that trans bodies are so different from other bodies in society that they should be separated and isolated from cis folks when using the washroom. Including multi-stalled men and women's washrooms in the creation of gender-inclusive washrooms begins to break down some of these barriers. So, gender-inclusive washrooms can either be multi-stalled or single-stalled, and they are not strictly designed for men or women. They are for every body. Many folks do prefer single-stalled restrooms with locks on the doors and stall doors that extend from the ceiling to the floor to ensure privacy and safety. This past semester at SFU, where I'm currently completing my undergrad in gender, sexuality, and women studies, I co-organized a shit-in with two other awesome activists. With two other awesome activists, Bonnie Thornbury and Marlena Bohl. We used our demonstration to raise awareness about the bathroom problem and to demand that the university implement gender-inclusive washrooms. We took over a men's washroom in one of the busiest areas on campus and sat inside the washroom or outside of it with our pants down. We also re-signed all the washrooms in this hallway to be gender inclusive. Our demands were to have all of the single-stalled accessible washrooms on campus converted to be gender inclusive, a number of multi-stalled men and women's washrooms, and a future policy at SFU to ensure that all SFU buildings will be required to have gender inclusive washrooms. We are now currently in the process of working with SFU administration to begin this process of change and hope to begin to re-sign current washrooms beginning this summer. The most common backlash we received, or anyone receives, against gender-inclusive washrooms is all about safety and attempts to reduce violence and assault against women and children. This kind of backlash relies heavily on the myth that trans folks are not who they say they are. They are perverts, they are deviants, and they are trying to trick us. The conversation recently in the media has been all about how to protect cisgender folks from transgender folks while in the washroom, when in reality, the conversation should be the other way around. What can a cis person do today to not harass or murder a trans person in the bathroom? That's the conversation we need to be having. There has never been a verifiable reported instance of a trans person harassing a cis person in the bathroom ever. And there have been no confirmed reports of male predators pretending to be trans in order to gain access to women's spaces and attacking them. But there has been well-documented reports of trans people being violently attacked, raped, and murdered by cis people in the washroom. So I will finish with this. Support gender-inclusive washrooms. Do not be compliant in gender policing by remaining silent on this issue. Because the pipes don't discriminate, why should we? Thank you.